It's time once again for another cold front.
Today we'll be talking about geographical influences on the weather.
From the Great Lakes to the coast to the mountains, we're explaining how big of a factor geography can be on the weather.
The cold front starts right now. Welcome to the cold front. I'm Joie Bettenhausen.
And I'm Sabrina. Geographical features that play a huge role in our weather, especially in northwest Indiana, are the Great Lakes. The Great Lakes are composed of 5 individual lakes: Superior, Huron, Michigan, Ontario, and Erie, which account for 1/5 of the Earth's freshwater surface at 6 quadrillion gallons.
Because the Great Lakes are a smaller body of water compared to the ocean, they do tend to freeze over during the winter months. As of February 19th, total Great Lakes ice coverage was at 42%. Lake Michigan has in fact frozen completely over 4 times in recorded history.
Not only are the Great Lakes a sight to see in the winter months, but they are also a popular recreation spot for boating, fishing, and swimming in the summer. Many beachfronts across the Great Lakes are filled with people enjoying outdoor activities during this time.
The Great Lakes also serve as transportation routes for the shipment of goods. Although these transportation methods occur on a daily basis, there have been a number of shipwrecks due to dangerous storms and treacherous reefs.
Not only can the lakes themselves be dangerous for travel during stormy weather, beachfronts during the winter can be dangerous for people due to the ice buildup on the shoreline. I headed out to the Indiana Dunes Lakeshore last week to check out what these ice shelves were all about. Let's take a look.
I'm at Washington Beach in Michigan City on this chilly day. If you take a look behind me, you could see the little ice mountains that have actually started to form. Those are ice shelves. While they do look mesmerizing, they actually can be quite dangerous. Even though it feels bitterly cold, the lakeshore is a popular place during winter. Locals are ecstatic to see the shelf ice. This phenomena is a result of northerly winds causing waves to crash onto the shore. Over time, ridges of ice mountains develop. The problem? Holes and cracks form within the ice, making it unsafe to walk on. It's difficult to distinguish the difference between the sand and the ice shelf. Applying even a small amount of weight onto the ice can cause a person to fall through, and hypothermia can easily set in.
But I know I've had family members who have died from trying to save others who have fallen through on the ice out in Lake Michigan, actually out in the Milwaukee area.
Safety is the biggest concern. The ice may appear to be solid, but it's possible to fall through in the weak spots. The chance of getting out is low. The Indiana Dunes State Park suggests if you want to observe the shelf ice, do so from a safe distance. This phenomena is just as beautiful 100 feet away.
We welcome Western Michigan local and VU student Blake Harms to our show today. So Blake, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Can you just give us a little bit of background about what major you are, what you do here at VU's campus?
So I'm a meteorology major, freshman here at Valparaiso University, and I'm involved in a lot of stuff here at VU TV as well as the Emergency Management Organization and Storm Intercept team.
All right, so you're pretty well known in Western Michigan. Those of us here in Northwest Indiana probably don't really know what you do. So can you just give us a little bit of background about what actually you do on your social media pages?
So what I do is I really try to quote-unquote tackle the big monster in West Michigan, which is the lake effect snow and the lake enhancement of the snow. And that's something that plays a big factor in our school closing decisions in West Michigan. So what I really do is try to combine what's happening now with what's going to happen in the future, and I do make snow day predictions for Western Michigan.
Nice.
So that's really cool, yeah. So when forecasting for schools, what kind of process or approach do you take for that?
So the National Weather Service plays a big role in that. They have the top experts of the area looking at the weather 24 hours a day. So looking at their forecasts, their graphical forecasts, and the TV stations as well, they add their own opinion into it, and that really helps get a second opinion. And looking at all of that, and then social media posts, what the road conditions are like, what they're expected to be like, and all those things really come together to the best of my ability.
So what exactly do you post for your viewers?
The biggest thing is the snow day prediction maps, which I found are pretty helpful because instead of just posting, I used to just post for my own hometown, but then I can able to spread it out the area a lot more. And so anytime someone sends me something weather-related, pictures or video, like the flooding we had a few days ago, and then the snow and the road conditions, I post those as well.
Okay,
nice.
so say a severe weather situation is imminent right now. What's your first step?
First step is getting it out to, a lot of my followers are in the elementary to high school range, so the biggest thing is getting them out to them what they need to know without getting too technical. So the biggest thing is putting out easy to understand visual aids, sometimes radar, just with the general direction of which way a storm or the snow is moving, and keeping it in terms that they understand best, because a lot of the times meteorologists can go a little bit too get too technical in terms of what they're talking about. And if you keep it simple, then the audience can understand a lot easier, and that's usually my number one goal.
Nice. So what language do you use then to keep it very simple?
So, for example, a few years ago, we had a tornado warning in the middle of an afternoon. Wasn't expected. And so the biggest thing I said was, I said in all caps, tornado warning, get underground, get in the basement. And that resonated well. I ended up hearing from a lot of people afterwards that just said, you know, you kept it simple, and that helped us take action. So.
Nice. That's good that
Yeah.
a lot of people are following you and really grasping what you're saying at a very simple level.
Right, and I've seen you do a few Facebook Lives around here. Which do you prefer, Facebook Lives or just posting right on social media?
Well, I actually do Instagram Live as well,
Okay.
so that really helps connect with the middle school audience, particularly who have a lot of questions. I can answer those. Facebook Live is nice for the older audience, per se, and doing that really helps me to connect with the audience as well, but posting gives me time to pre-plan out everything. I do have a website as well that I put updates on.
That's really great that you do that. I'm so glad that it's really beneficial in the Western Michigan community and with
Yes.
all the schools.
Yeah,
That's
thank you.
really great.
Well, thank you, Blake, for joining us in the studio today. When we come back, we will be talking more about lake effect snow along with land sea breezes.
And later we discuss the weather on the northeast coast with a New England native.
We'll be right back.
What is passion? At Valpo, it's something that pours out of us uncontrollably. It's a late night shot of caffeine, cramming for finals, a jam session with friends. It sees deep into space, turns big stuff into small potatoes, floats boats and floods the senses. Passion is alive, it has a heartbeat, and it lives in you. How do we know? Because at Valpo, passion is who we are.
In a world where entertainment is at risk, one man is given a mission, but he is about to face his biggest challenge yet. He will race against the clock and open doors to new possibilities that will save weekends as we know it.
What are you doing?
I'm looking for free movies.
Oh, I'll help you with that.
Just go to movies.valpo.edu. They have all the best movies, including The Hobbit and 22 Jump Street.
Whoa, it's that easy?
It's that easy.
Grab some popcorn, grab some buddies, and watch movies.valpo.edu's great selection.
Since we already introduced lake effect snow along western Michigan, let's talk about the lake effect chances on the southern side of the lake.
For lake effect snow, we need a cold air mass moving across warm lake water. The northerly winds move across the lake and pick up moisture. This results in lake effect snow and sometimes in Valpo.
We sat down with expert lake effect snow professor Dr. Craig Clark to learn more about the forcings involved with this phenomena.
The key ingredients for lake effect snow include a very cold air. The air has to be very cold, below freezing of course for snow, and very cold relative to the lake surface below it. The other thing that we really need is a wind direction to produce a good fetch across the lake. So the air has to cross a nice distance across the lake. So a north wind across Lake Michigan, crosses much more of the lake than a west wind. Well, actually, Valparaiso usually misses it with northwest winds taking the snow a little bit to our east. If we get a north wind, then we can get a lot of lake effect snow, but that's less common here toward LaPorte and South Bend. They get a lot more because those northwest winds cross the lake right toward them. Yes, they all play a role. The big difference is the difference between the western lakes and the eastern lakes. The western lakes have a different orientation with regard to the wind direction following mid-latitude cyclones in the wintertime. So the eastern lakes can get really spectacular narrow snow bands because you often have west winds for a prolonged period, and so that's very favorable crossing a big section of the lake. With the western lakes, like Lake Michigan, the orientation is different. So we tend to get a lot of smaller snows, whereas out in western New York, they get some really spectacular narrow snow bands. The most memorable lake effect snow event I've experienced was in early February 2009 when we had a mostly due north wind, and overnight a very narrow, very intense lake effect band migrated back toward us in a surprise overnight, and we got 2 feet of snow in Valparaiso, Indiana. That was amazing.
Although wind itself is an important factor for producing lake effect snow, wind direction is a key determinant whether or not your county receives 6 inches of snow or nothing at all. Joy's on the green screen right now to give an in-depth analysis of the processes behind lake effect snow and where else wind is important in other circulations. Joy?
So for lake effect snow, you need warm water here and cooler land next to it. You get a due north wind coming across the lake, and that will give us exactly snow here in Valparaiso. Now, if the wind is just a little bit northwest, then we missed all of that, same with northeast. So again, we do need that northerly wind to come across that area. And without that warm water and cooler land, we would not receive lake effect snow at all. So let's talk about land breeze here. Now this happens at night. Now you need cooler air to descend on the beach, and that all comes off of the beach has cooler air, obviously, and it goes out towards the land, or towards the ocean. And with the ocean here, the ocean is usually warmer at night because the heat capacity for water and land are very different. Water's heat capacity is 3 times that of land. So we obviously know it gets cooler at night, warmer during the day. Well, that ocean water keeps all the heat it received from the sun during the day, and will still have it throughout the night. And you'll get that warm rising air moving straight up. Now this will create that circulation. Now this circulation is a lot less strong at night compared to during the day. And that's because at night, again, it's a lot cooler on land and the ocean is not as warm as during the day. So here we go. This is a sea breeze. So kind of a different circulation, but in the opposite direction. So again, you have the sun heating up all day the warm land. Now that's going to create low pressure here on land, and it's going to have air rise. Now it's going to rise across and cool down, because remember again, the lake or ocean water is cooler than the land. Now this could cause thunderstorms if there's air pollution. This could disperse the air pollution, which could be harmful for us because, again, this circulation just keeps on moving across our area. Now, next, we have a coastal front. Now, you kind of think of like a warm front or a cold front. This exactly resembles a warm front here. So you have your cold land. Your land is colder than your water again, and this happens during the winter months. So from November through March is when you would see this. This takes place near the southeast coast, again, where you have that temperature difference between the land and the water. Now, I don't know if you remember that bomb cyclone that we heard of take place in January. Well, this can help strengthen that cyclone and produce that bomb cyclogenesis. Now, this can, again, also produce thunderstorms and move inward towards that cold air. Now, again, we only see this in the southeast, and some of it could move also from land to water. So again, something we don't usually see here, but something that does take place outside of our world. Back to you, Sabrina.
Thanks, Joy. Another commercial break coming up, but when we come back, we talk with a Valpo student from New England to get his take on East Coast weather. Plus that and more in just a few minutes.
Valparaiso University, where passion meets purpose.
Well, welcome back to the cold front. We've already introduced how influential geography can be on weather near the Great Lakes, but now we're going to dig a little deeper into weather along the East Coast.
To get a first-hand account, we sat down earlier today with a meteorology student from New Jersey to learn about New England weather and how the nearby geography contributes to it. Let's take a look at the conversation we had with him now. So thanks for joining us here today, James. If you could just tell us a little bit about yourself. We know you're from New Jersey, but what are you involved here?
Sure. Right here, I'm a senior double major in meteorology and theater. I'm pretty active in both of those. I'm also a very musical person, so I'm in Phi Mu Alpha, the music fraternity, and I'm in a bunch of a cappella groups and the chorale and all that. And yeah.
Nice. So
Cool.
how would you characterize New England weather?
Let's see. So New England is the basically the northeasternmost part of the Northeast, and so like the Midwest, it has pretty cold winters, but it doesn't get quite as much snow unless you go way up into Maine. Then you're basically in Canada as far as the weather is concerned. But basically, it's about as cold as the Midwest, but not as snowy. For the rest of the Northeast, say New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, at least if you're not by the Great Lakes, it's a lot more mild generally, not as snowy. In my hometown in New Jersey, we average maybe 2-3 feet of snow in a given winter instead of like the 4 or 5 you get here.
Okay, yeah, that's a big difference.
Yeah.
Really?
So you mentioned how you have the Northeast, but you also have New England. So the
Yeah.
weather's different in both of those places?
A bit, yeah. So basically, the New England weather, just by being further north, is definitely colder on average. But a lot of New England cities, like Boston especially, are closer to the ocean, which tends to moderate things. Further south, towards New Jersey, Maryland, down to D.C., it's definitely a lot more mild, though the summers are hotter there, definitely. Hottest I can recall in New Jersey is 108 degrees one summer.
Wow.
That was very hot, but also that was a record, so
Okay.
yeah,
Fair enough.
that's not normal. Your results may vary. This summer, I was in State College, Pennsylvania, which is in central Pennsylvania, up in the mountains, and it was probably the nicest summer weather I'd ever experienced because most days had a high around 80 or so. Some days it was just in the 70s. It was a very cool summer, but also since you're inland enough from the ocean, but also very far away from the Gulf too, but not in the cornfields of the Midwest, which actually cause a lot of humidity. It was very cool and nice. So you could just walk around for several miles and just enjoy nature and not break a sweat too much.
So would you say that the Appalachians or the Atlantic Ocean play a major impact on the weather?
Oh, definitely, definitely. The Atlantic Ocean is a great moderating influence, not as much as, say, the Pacific is for California, because wind is much more often from the west than from the east. But even so, let's look at our January temperature averages. I think your average high around here in January is maybe 30 degrees. You're lucky if you'll get past 30 in January. But in New York City, in New York, you'll average 40-something degrees in January. So you've got about even odds of being above 40 on any given day. So I can only recall a few times when we would be below freezing for more than a week at a time in New Jersey.
That's not too bad.
It's great. It's wonderful.
Not bad at all.
Oh, yeah.
So you talked about you receive feet of snow back home, whereas we don't really receive that here in the Midwest.
True.
So do any other factors, are they different here compared to the New Jersey and back where you're at home?
Definitely, yeah. It's all about the different kinds of storms that'll go through these types of regions. In the Midwest, we'll usually get storms that come off the Rocky Mountains, either your Alberta Clippers, which tend to bring very fluffy snow because the temperatures and dew points are so low that the snowflakes form in a different way. Or we'll get lake effect snow, which is also much fluffier than snow we get further east. Unless you're in northwest Pennsylvania or western New York, we generally don't have lake effect snow in the northeast. But most of our snow comes from nor'easters, which basically form somewhere in the southeast, whether in the Gulf or just offshore of, say, Florida or the Carolinas. Then they'll race up the coast, where they're enhanced by a strong temperature contrast between the warm Gulf Stream water and the cold land temperatures. And then they'll race up the coast and sometimes dump feet of snow on a given place. And as for the Appalachians, they can actually reduce some severe weather. In New Jersey, it's very, very rare that we have tornadoes. Even hail is pretty rare. I've only seen hail twice in my life. They've both been in Indiana.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy that the weather could be so different.
Yeah.
In different parts of the country.
And we're at the same latitude, too.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. So it's kind of interesting how it's so different, how there's so many different factors that play a role into it. Right. Which weather do you like better? Do you like that Midwest weather or more of that New Jersey, Northeast weather?
In the winters, summers, well, no, not in the summers. I've never really been here in the summer. But winter and spring, I definitely prefer northeastern weather because it's a lot more mild and there are a lot more breaks in the cold and you get to see the sun. It's wonderful. Wow. Though it definitely stays slushier for a longer time. So I'd say the snow here is prettier, but the weather overall is nicer back there. As for summers, I want to say they're probably both pretty equal. We both get hot and humid. But say in the Appalachian Mountains, it's beautiful in the summer, as far as I can tell. In fall, it's absolutely lovely, whether you're in the Northeast or Midwest.
All right, awesome.
Thank you, James.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. It's been a fun time.
One last commercial break before we examine the science behind thermal lifting mechanisms.
We'll be right back.
Valparaiso University, where passion meets purpose.
Well, I think that's all we need. Thank you so much for coming in. We'll be in touch.
Okay, this is it. Just shake his hand and walk out with your head held high. Don't mess this up.
Thank you. Nailed it.
Don't let a bad handshake get in the way of getting the job you want. Find out more at the Career Center.
As we already discovered, geographical influences play a role in affecting different types of weather that we experience all across the country. Sabrina is at the wall, ready to explain the science behind mountains and how they contribute to the weather. Sabrina?
Before we start going over the science behind the mountains, we're just going to give a brief overview of where the mountain ranges are across the U.S. So on the East Coast, we have the Appalachian Mountains, and the highest peak is in western North Carolina. We look over on the West Coast, we have the Rocky Mountains, where they're most prevalent over on the western side of Colorado. Now, quick overview of the slope-valley flows, which are the most influential for the weather, is that slope-valley flows are a thermal process, so it all depends on the temperature. It's not dependent on how steep or high that mountain is. Now, the main components involve the slope flow and the valley winds, so it has to do with the peaks of the mountains, but also in the valleys. Now, there's so many different weather events that could occur due to these slope-valley flows. But first we're going to go over what exactly happens during an upflow event, for example, right now. So we have the winds going up the mountain. Now this causes heating at the top of the surface and also pressure to fall at the peak as well. Now this is called anabatic flow. And we go into the morning hours where this is where your upslope flow is going to start beginning, just about 3 hours after sunrise. You have flow moving up the mountain, and in the valley you have sinking motion. Now, over the next few hours, this is eventually going to strengthen. So by midday, early afternoon, you're going to have your strongest upslope flow. And because of that, you have on both sides of the mountain, winds coming up it, and clouds are going to be at the peaks. Now, another type of slope flow is downslope flow. Now, this has winds moving down the sides of the mountain. You're going to have cooling at the top of the peak as well. Now, this is called katabatic flow because it occurs in the evening hours and at night. So similar to upslope flow, we have downslope flow, which begins 3 hours after sunset, not sunrise like upslope flow. Now with this in the evening, just after sunset, you have the flow moving down the mountains, but instead of sinking in the valley, you have rising motion in the valley. And over the next few hours, this strengthens as well, and instead you get an inversion in the valley. Now this is the cause for a lot of air quality problems and also fog to develop later at night. So some of the influences for the slope flows: temperature, surface temperature. There's a big contrast in a lot of the mountain areas. The orientation of the slope. So if you get winds moving directly into the mountains from the west, you're going to get more of a valley flow and also slope flow as well. And also those large-scale winds, that direction and intensity are going to play a big factor in the slope flows and the nearby terrain as well. There's a few other mountain areas nearby and different areas in general that really contribute to the way that the flow works near the mountains. It's really interesting because, we're not used to that here.
No, we're definitely not.
All right, so that just about does it for another episode of The Cold Front. If you want to be part of one of our future shows, please email us at viewtv.weather@valpo.edu.
Our next episode is about climate change and the factors associated with it. Be sure to watch the next Cold Front on March 22nd.
Also, stay up to date on the latest news here on campus and around the country by following View TV on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. I'm Sabrina.
And I'm Joy. Have a great spring break, Valpo.